let's start the room. And if people could just introduce themselves, just start here and go around. We can do that. Just take a microphone and say who you are, if you want.
Hi, I am Jake Schumann. I live on Hillwood Drive. Been here for a year. I don't know if there's any other information you'd like me to provide, so I'll just pass it along, I guess.
Infinite pleasure. I live on Rose Street.
Cheryl Erickson, and I live upstairs, part of the Quaker community.
Thanks for coming.
Karen Long, I live on Henry Street. Sharon Busher, I live on East Avenue.
I'm Angie Chapel, I live on North Prospect Street.
Kathy Orwell, also on North Prospect.
Carter Newser, I'm over on Colchester Ave. Brian Sheena from Isham Street.
Hi, I'm Carol Livingston. I'm on the steering committee. I live on July 4th.
I'm Jonathan Chapel-Sokol. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm Christopher McCandless also from the Burlington Friends meeting, like Cheryl, and I live across the street in North Prospect.
Thank you, Christopher. I'm Jonathan Chapel-Sokol, and I'm on the steering committee as well, and I live on North Prospect Street as well. Folks who are on Zoom, if you can, how do we do this? Let's start with Jim. I'm just going to go around.
Jim Drummond, I live on North Prospect Street.
And could you just try again? I think we're muted here.
I'm Jim Drummond. I live on North Prospect Street. Can you hear me?
We're working on the audio.
Okay. I'll try. Can you hear me now or? Can you hear me now?
We're in a new place and it's a new year, and so there's a little bit of confusion. We'll get it.
Well, you can see my mouth moving anyways.
Jim, I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you too, Martine.
We can hear Jim.
Long time no see.
You might be there. Let's try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes.
I'm Jim Drummond. I live on North Prospect Street.
Thank you. Martine?
Hi, I am Martine LaRocque-Ulick. I live in the New North End, and I'm here to just give a quick intro in the speak out part of the meeting.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, I live off of East Avenue, and I got to the meeting late. I'm not sure if you already know about the meeting ID being incorrect on the Front Porch Forum posting. Probably you do. Anyway, I was happy to get it from the city. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. We just discovered it, and we're working our way through people who are trying to log in. I'm going to actually just check my mail to make sure there's nobody else. There are. Oh no, that's good. Okay, so why don't we get started? I want to go through some announcements and then we'll do speak out. As I say, there's a few, so I apologize for taking up a ton of time in the meeting. Welcome to the new meeting venue, and please let us know how this works. And the Zoom will be much more straightforward next time. We'll make sure we have everything straight. Our thanks go to Christopher McCandless and the Friends for the space, Domino's Pizza for the sustenance, and please at any time go out and help yourself to the pizza which is out there, and Mojave Zedek for the parking spaces. They're graciously letting us use the parking just north of the building on the other side of the street. First item is that earlier this summer, the Ward 8 Steering Committee announced their decision to stop meeting with Ward 1 and to manage their own meetings. If you have any questions about this decision, feel free to contact the Ward 8 Steering Committee. As you may have already heard, Jack Hansen has resigned from the City Council effective today, so he is not here tonight. The City Councilor has a lot to balance: constituent issues, city issues, global issues, and I want to thank Jack for his efforts in find that balance. A very important part of this is that a special election will be held in the East District later this fall. And this is the most important thing. We need a city councilor. They could be you. People who come to NPA meetings and are interested in their community are just the kind of people who might want to be city councilors and might make great city councilors. So if you care enough about the city to participate in the NPA, you may just have what it takes to represent the district. Please think about it. Even if you're on screen and not in the room. As we are now just 3 folks working on delivering NPA meetings, this is the steering committee. We want to stress how much we'd appreciate more folks joining the committee. It's an opportunity for you to make this meeting what you want it to be. And if you don't want to commit to the steering committee, but you want to help with something, one of the things we definitely need help with is we need some youngster who understands social media and could help us better communicate to the community what we're doing and why we're doing it and when we're doing it. So please consider joining the steering committee or just helping out, volunteering to help out. Thank you all for participating in the summer community activities we had. Ward one night at the Lake Monsters and the barbecue at Schmanska Park. We look forward to organizing more non-meeting community activities in the future. And it's really, again, it's up to the community what works and what we want to keep doing. This is an announcement from the Ad Hoc Reappraisal Committee. The Ad Hoc Reappraisal Committee is holding a public forum on Thursday, September 22nd at 6 p.m. in the Sharon Busher Room at City Hall and over Zoom if you don't want to attend in person. If you want to share your thoughts or opinions on last year's reappraisal process, and certainly over the past year, many people have, but this is the formal place where the committee is going to meet to try to make some really solid recommendations on what to do going forward. Please come to the meeting or Zoom in. And there is a committee webpage, which you can find on the assessor's webpage. So if you go to search directories, go to assessor, go to the blue bar on the left side at the very bottom is the Ad Hoc Reappraisal Committee's webpage, and you go there and all the meetings are warned there, and you can see when they are and where they are and what the Zoom coordinates for it are. If you want to just provide written comments, and this is important because a lot of people don't want to come to meetings, but they might want to let people know how they feel about things. You can send your written comments to Joe Dempsey, who's the staff, the city staff representative on the committee, and that's J Dempsey, JDEMPSEY at burlingtonbt.gov. Earlier this year, Ward 1 purchased a subscription to SurveyMonkey, a 1-year subscription to see whether this is something that we want to do more regularly. But it's a way in which we can poll folks who may not come to meetings to express their opinions. If you have a topic you think should be surveyed, please let us know, or you can help us write the survey too. One example could be redistricting choices, because there's a very small number of choices. It'd be great to get a broader cross section as to who feels what about what. Then some updates from DPW, and the first is on Prospect Hill, and Prospect Hill sidewalks are about to get redone. And so I think things are going to close like as of tomorrow. It's going to get a little hard on Prospect Hill. And then Rob Goulding from DPW has a report on North Prospect Street. And the short-term update on North Prospect Street is that tomorrow morning, the contractor will be paving the trench at North Street and North Prospect, the intersection right over there. But the road's going to be closed. Basically, everything's going to be closed at that intersection for the day. It should be open by rush hour in the evening. The long-term update that he writes, our contractor has finished relining the water main. As part of the normal process for water main relining, we then conducted pressure tests to ensure structural integrity of the new liner. On one section of the liner, the pressure test did not pass due to leakage. All other sections of the liner have passed the pressure test. We will be sending a camera through. There's going to be a little colonoscopy on North Prospect. Send a camera through the liner to help finalize the plan for this section, which will determine the repair method, either relining or replacing the whole section of the pipe. That will determine the scope and duration for the remainder of the project, and ultimately final paving the road. We expect the remaining water work to be done this year. All access pits will be paved to grade before the season is up. At this time, due to this delay, we now anticipate full width paving to happen in the spring. So if you have questions about that, you can address them to Water Resources or to the DPW Communications probably. And we'll work to make sure that there are ongoing front porch forum reports on this, just to keep you up to date on what's going on. And with that, I think we should move to speak out.
Before you do that, Jonathan, can you just ask them online so I'm trying to speak something with you?
Okay, Fletcher, could you introduce yourself? And you're on mute.
Yes, I'm Fletcher and I live on Riverside Avenue. And I'm happy to make it. I think I got the date down now and hope to make this a habit.
Great, thank you.
Can you try with someone else?
Jim, could you just speak a little bit more, just to test our audio here?
Here I am. Can you hear me?
I think so, but.
If I make a dumb joke, you'll know it's working, right?
Is it loud enough just for this the computer? Needs to go.
But
Can you send me links? If I send you the messages. These are just folks they're investing in somebody else who want to get it. Is it, you have it typed in or? Let me do it. Well, I can see you now. That works.
absolutely, I'll do an interpretive dance for representing the current state of public safety. It might get, someone might get hurt. So the only speakers you have available on a laptop?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know you.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And they can hear us. We can hear them. Just
Yeah.
fine. We can hear them if we listen. I'm glad you hear us.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that louder than it was before?
No, but we can hear it. It's not very quiet.
Probably needs to speed it.
So
I-
I
The reason,
apologize, everyone.
the reason I asked is I'm actually in another meeting and I jumped off that meeting to come to this one. So unfortunately, I can't stay too long.
Oops, you're like, other things on the table.
Okay, why don't you start, speak out then? Because we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, great, thanks. My name's Martine LaRoque-Ulick, and I'm running for state senate in this district, which is the Chittenden Central District. It's a new district. Some of you may be familiar with it. Hopefully you are at this point, but it's basically most of Burlington, Winooski, most of Essex, and a little chunk of Colchester. It's kind of hard to find a good map of the district. If you are curious, please send me an email and I'll send you one. But I just wanted to introduce myself. I will come back in October when I have a little bit more time to stay and hang out. I'm at a Vermont School Board Association meeting tonight. Some of you also may know me from the Burlington School Board. I'm a 3-term school board member. A little background, I grew up in South Burlington. I taught at Essex for 20 years. And like I said, I'm on the school board. One of the reasons why I decided to run, as many of you know, it's been a rough few years in Burlington. Our high school was closed down due to PCB contamination. I don't think I need to tell you how difficult that was. We ultimately were displaced into a Macy's building, which has served us well. But it's been a really rough period of time. And I know that this kind of upheaval is something that we're going to be seeing across the state as more and more aging school buildings need renovation and rebuilding. So something I want to do if I make it to the legislature is bring back school construction aid. We're one of the only states in the country that doesn't have school construction aid. And it just seems like at this point in time, it's something that we need desperately. Also very, very concerned about PCB and radon contamination. I recently wrote a resolution for the Vermont School Board Association to make sure that that is elevated to a high level of concern in the legislature. And also just being someone who has worked in education for most of my life, since 1988. I know the kinds of travails and suffering that we have in our society. When you are an educator, you see food insecurity, housing insecurity, you see mental health issues. And these are at the forefront of your consciousness on a daily basis as you're helping kids and families navigate society. And we know coming out of COVID, things are hard for many, many people. So I'm really happy to be stepping up and trying to do my best to support my community. I would love to answer any of your questions. If you have any, please reach out. You probably have my board email, which is mgulick@bsdvt.org, but my home email as well, martinegulick@gmail.com. I'd love to speak with you. I'd love to answer questions. And like I said, I will be back in October. So I look forward to seeing you then and being able to stay a little bit longer. Thank you.
Thanks, Martine. Who else would like to speak?
I would like to.
Brian?
I was invited to come tonight because I'm running for re-election as a state representative for Chittenden 15, which includes most, if not all, of Ward 1, as well as a piece of Ward 2, just across the other side of Willard Street where I live. And I don't want to take up too much time because you might want to hear from new people more, but I do think it's important to report directly to constituents. And so I am running for re-election again. It's been rough the last 2 years as a healthcare worker. I've had COVID 3 times, and it's taken its toll on me in the long term. And I've also experienced ongoing trauma as a healthcare worker that's not getting better because our healthcare system is falling apart. We're seeing 40 to 60% vacancies, which is clogging the system of care at a time when acuity is higher. There's been a rise in overdoses, rise in suicides, a rise in people with co-occurring disorders. As methamphetamine has come to Burlington, it's created sort of a perfect storm of the opiate pandemic and the meth pandemic during the coronavirus pandemic. So under these conditions, we're all seeing the impact on the streets, in our homes, in our schools. So I think it is important to have some people in the legislature with that direct experience. What I'm working on over the summer is, as a healthcare worker, I'm trying to come up with ideas about things we can do where we realign services or do our work differently so that with the same amount of money, we get more from it. And I'm trying to figure some things out along the way to maybe bring back to the legislature next year, and also talking with members of the administration and with the governor's administration along the way. And I appreciate that he is working with me on a variety of things right now, at least in terms of this. Even if we have our differences, we have the same goal of wanting to prevent violence and wanting to enhance public safety.
the governor just released a plan in which he talked about strategically using police resources statewide and data to target violent crimes and to clear up the clog in the courts by having people prosecuted. And we are letting people, as a society, we're enabling people to hurt themselves and others at this point. It's really sad to witness on the ground level. But if we just round people up and throw them in overcrowded jails where we don't have enough corrections workers, it's going to be bad for the workers, the people, and the community. So I'm hoping that we can work together to use this moment in history to implement a pilot project in Vermont to try out the Norway model. And I'm happy to come back and talk about that in detail. But in Norway, the idea is that prisoners are your neighbors and you treat them as neighbors, and that there's community campuses that people move into as they transition out of prison, and then a system of housing and support. And their recidivism rate went from 70% to 20% with this model. And if Vermont did this, we would become the 5th state in the US to try it. California passed a bill last week to start exploring this, and the world always looks at California and Vermont. So all eyes are going to be on us now. So now is the time. And I'm hoping to work with the governor and other members of the legislature to look at how to make corrections actually be a rehabilitation system for people, so that when we take people's freedom for causing harm, we don't cause more harm, because violence begets violence. And when the state uses force to try to get people to comply, what I've learned, whether it be as a healthcare worker, as an activist, unhoused people at Sears Lane, as a legislator, et cetera, that the prison system makes things worse for people. So this is a chance for us to actually help people when we hold them accountable for the harm that they caused by not causing more harm. There's a lot more I want to say, but I don't want to take up too much time. I think we also need to look at the training of police when we deploy them, and the training of healthcare workers, and create consistent training across all the pieces of public safety and improve the coordination. Because I'll end with this, like I said, 40 to 60% of healthcare workers of jobs are open. And when you look at exit surveys with my union at the Howard Center, Ask Me 1674, people say the reason they're leaving is they don't feel valued. And when I talked with Lacey Smith, the police social worker, she said that on the police exit interviews, what is the main reason they're leaving? They don't feel valued. So instead of us all being pit against each other, we need to bring people together in public safety and create a culture where we're all getting supported properly, and we're so that we're not harmed in the process of doing our jobs, and so that we're not causing any more harm to people, and that we're truly promoting the public good. So I'll end on that note. Happy to come back. There's other people. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah. Sure.
Hello, my name is Catherine Hill. I'm not running for anything, but I'm here to support my friend Jake Shimmer, who is running. I like to say a few things about him, because he personally helped me through a lot of stuff. So I think he's a good candidate because he has race awareness. And what I mean by that, there's a lot of racial disparities in the hospitals that I dealt with personally, along with me and a couple other people of my color who had dealt with social workers in DCF and not following guidelines. And Jake went to the extreme to reach out to councils and to write newspapers and people on blogs to make this aware that these things are happening. That and as you were saying, a lot of nurses are leaving because they are placed in a situation where they just want to be good people, and they are in here with a bunch of people who are being not great people. And I dealt with a lot of racial stuff personally myself. Jake is mission driven. He's a creative problem solver, and everything I'm saying here, I've seen with my own eyes. He's invested in relationships. He demonstrates integrity. He has a vision. He's teamwork, willingness to learn. He communicates very well. He's self-motivated, culture aware. He has integrity. He's dependable. He has goals, and he's driven. He's just not. He goes to the extreme under the ground. When people say things like, "Oh, this is so not great. We should do something about it," they do nothing about it. Jake takes that next step, and I know for a fact that he has a lot of schoolwork to do, and I've been taking up so much of his time because he makes a difference. This one guy here made a difference with a lot of people, because a lot of people are just not aware, they are afraid. They are afraid to step up. They feel like this is wrong, this shouldn't happen, but they don't express that voice. And Jake says, screw that, I'm gonna take this voice and I'm gonna go with it. This is happening, and it's happening right now, and something needs to happen about it. He's just an all-around great guy. I love him to death, and I will vote for him, and I will make signs to have everybody vote for him, because this man is the man for the job, because he would not let it go. If it's something, no funding, we're gonna find it. I don't care if he out here with a lemonade stand, he's gonna get it, because he's that driven. We have no idea, like, you have anything going on that's really important that no one's listening to you about, after this meeting, you talk to him, and I'm serious, he is gonna go all the exchange for you. He cares about the elderly, he cares about children, he cares about the way people are representing themselves and not doing their job. Like, for example, I went through something personally with DCF, Department of Children and Family, where I had a diabetic attack. And they took my 5-month-old baby out the house and assumed it was some drugs. Just because I'm Black, and I'm saying it just as a fact, it was drugs. I went to the hospital, everything was taken care of, the drugs was not the issue, I was not on any drugs. And they were just like, oh, what do we do now? Let's invent a story. But Jake was like, no, that's not gonna happen. I'm gonna write this person, that person, I'm going to Waterbury, I'm going to Montpelier, we're gonna make this right, and he did. So, like I said, he's the man for the job, because he would not let it go. So that's all I have to say, don't want to take up too much time, but.
And what are you running for?
Yeah, so many guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
You first sold, but with the job.
Trouble.
Yeah, thank you, Kat, for announcing my candidacy. So yeah, I've started conversations this summer with different folks, notifying people and kind of learning about the process. I think that I have reached a point in my life where I'm ready, and I think the community has a need that I can fill. So I am stepping up, and I am now announcing my candidacy for the East District Council seat. Thank you very much for your support, Kat. Yeah, I won't go through my whole resume, but I'll tell you that I have lived in Burlington my entire adult life. So for the past 13 years, mostly downtown. In 2018, I moved to Ward 7, and I have now been in Ward 1 for the past year. So I'll give you my professional history since the beginning of the pandemic. When the pandemic started, I said, I can't sit at home for 12 to 18 months, because, everybody who says they didn't know how long it was going to last. Tony Fauci was saying 12 to 18 months from day one. So I was listening and I was hearing that, and I was saying, I'm not going to sit at home for 12 to 18 months. So I worked with Liz Curry and some folks at the state, and helped stand up the COVID Recovery Center for folks with housing insecurity who needed a place to quarantine and isolate safely. After that was stood up, I transitioned and worked with CVOEO to help set up the Hotel Housing Assistance Program. And I ended up working at the Holiday Inn for 12 months. During that time, I was helping folks in mental health and other forms of crisis when there was no one to call. We could call the police and we could call the ambulance, but for mental health, there was no first call. There was no emergency evaluations to be done in the emergency department. So, I have that experience of dealing with crisis and emergency situations. After that position, I became an EMT. After working as an EMT, I have spent the past summer working with People's Kitchen, and I'm currently helping my friend Kat. And I am also working on creating an organization so that we can have a community-owned and operated food truck for nonprofits, feeding folks, things like that. I would love your support, because I believe that there are a lot of reasons why individuals in our community are currently experiencing despair. And we don't need folks to be in despair. We are a strong community. We got through the pandemic so well because of our strength. And I think that we can build on these strengths. We can build bridges. We can work with our state representatives and our state senators, and we can do better. this divisiveness that we're seeing in local politics, that doesn't need to be happening. That's reflective of the national politic, but that's not how we do things here. And I think that we can do better. I'm working with my friend Infinite on his campaign, so I'd love to turn it over to him, and then maybe we can be done with the politics, folks.
Thank you, Jake. My name's Infinite Cold Pleasure. I live in the Old North End. I've also been here for most of my adult life, for about 30 years now. Worked at Spectrum Youth and Family Services for a few years. And for the past decade, I've spent well, almost a decade, about 9.5 years, working with Voices for Vermont's Children as a community organizer and policy advocate. So I am have been technically a lobbyist for children and families in the State House as, you know, I guess a vocation, so to speak, and as well as a community organizer with families who have children in the Burlington School District and Winooski School District. So I've gotten to see both sides, you know, working with folks on the ground with families and students in the Burlington and Winooski schools. And I've also had the opportunity to advocate for not just new bills, but specific provisions in some bills, like the literacy bill that just came out, community schools bill. I am a member of the Act One working group for ethnic studies and social equity in schools. And so I've been doing that for the past couple of years and did a lot of work on the education quality standards around literacy in that document. And, you know, I have to say, you know, I've had the opportunity to sit at the feet of people who have been working in the legislature for decades. You know, some mentors of mine who have really kind of walked me through the legislative process, which sometimes can be a little opaque, right? You know, a bill comes from the House, you know, as a kind of you know, a template, and then it gets to the Senate and it has all these new items in it without very much public input, right? And so it's coming from, you know, people, you know, like myself sometimes, you know, as a, you know, so-called lobbyist of the state, you know, special interests that they sometimes call us, and sometimes just from people who are sitting in the Senate who have, you know, their own ideas around, you know, how bills should go. Needless to say, you know, I don't see a lot of engagement of the public with our legislative process. And that's really something that I want to bring to Montpelier as a state senator representing Chittenden County as an independent. So I'm the tortoise in this race, right? And that's okay, because, you know, as an organizer, I do see some openings after the redistricting, being able to canvass from the New North End to Essex Junction. Right. In Burlington, it stops at Maple Street, at the south of Maple Street. And so luckily for me, I won't have to try to convince Wards 5 and 6, you know, to be on my side. But that's okay too, because, you know, I'm not sure how the districts were divided, but I do feel like, you know, I would be representing, you know, as much as Chittenden County as possible. Chittenden Central happens to be the most diverse district in the state of Vermont, right? And, you know, and the most dense district in the state of Vermont. As far as legislative priorities, you know, I've seen a lot of bills pass and then just kind of we move on to the next bill. And so I'm really curious about the implementation phases of some of these bills as they're going into, you know, into play. In particular, we have passed a bill to create an office of, you know, a public advocate office for children and families. And I think that's something that we have to really watch closely, because we really want that office to have you know, some power and some authority, you know, to look out for children and families. The community schools bill only targeted 5 schools. I think we should expand that bill. The literacy bill needs to be very watched very closely in the implementation process. Half of Vermont's K through 12 children are not reading at grade level. Half. And then when you break it down by ethnicity and race and disability, the numbers get even more tragic. So we do have a literacy crisis. And Martina's right. We also have this, I think, this environmental justice issue with our school building. My hope is that we don't focus so much on the building that we don't forget about the underlying issues that kids are facing, kids and families are facing in our education system. Our teachers are being asked to do way too much. We have a para shortage right now. It's really, I mean, talking to school workers, not just teachers, but school workers, it's really sad. Having gone through a teaching licensing program half this year and then stopping short because I was talking to elementary school teachers who were saying, you know what, Infinite, this might not be the time for you to come into the classroom because we're doing, we're really struggling right now in the classroom. And so if there's anything else you have on your, your bucket list, you might want to wait on this one. So my email address, if anyone's interested in contacting me, is i.culcleas, as in Sam, ure@gmail.com. Jake graciously accepted to be my treasurer. So, everything that was said about him is true. He's really stretching himself to try and help, build the capacity of folks who, haven't done this before. Although this is not my first rodeo, I did run for mayor back in 2018. And we got lucky and won a ward. We got lucky and won a whole ward, that being, Ward 8. And we hope to, get that lucky again, right? So thank you for your time and thank you for the invitation. Hopefully I'll be back next month.
Thank you. So, first of all, can I say something about, for all the people that are here that are running, if they have any campaign literature, it would be great to leave some so that, because no, I didn't write down any of your emails or contact info. So that would be wonderful. And I was a city councilor and I was an independent. And so it's not easy when you're not affiliated with one of the major parties. So I wish you very well. And I do remember you because I listened to the mayoral debates and I thought you did an excellent job. So I'm just going to state that. So very good. Thank you. Okay. My name is Sharon Busher and I'm still alive, even though there's a room named after me. So
That's a big deal, actually.
yeah. So I came for 2 reasons. One, Jonathan mentioned, because although I don't live on North Prospect, I wondered what the heck was going on with the construction that was never ending and never seeming to have anybody ever working there either. So I just wanted to understand that. So I reached out to DPW to find out today, and Jonathan shared that he had been reaching out too. And I think both of us feel like we can understand problems, but if you don't communicate those problems, it's really hard to live with those and understand that there is going to be a timeline and hopefully a completion date. So I'm not going to say any more about that because Jonathan covered that. I'm here because although I'm no longer a city councilor, I am a political junkie and I can't let go of it. And so I am what I call a ghost counselor. I sign in and I've attended every single city council meeting since I lost my election. And I don't always talk, but I'm finding my voice again, unfortunate for all of you. But anyway, so one thing that I have tried to do is to really try to keep involved in issues that I think are important to the community or our ward. And one thing that is about to happen is the rezoning of Trinity campus by the University of Vermont. And this item is now before the Planning Commission. And I've been following that with UVM's presentation, but it came to I became aware that none of the planning commissioners had ever been to the site. And so I asked for a site visit. And that unfortunately happened yesterday in the rain. But having said that, there's still some value. The problem, and if any of you don't know that, Trinity campus has opportunity to add some additional housing. And we all know we need housing. And the idea that we all hope to embrace is the fact that if the University of Vermont can create some housing that could retain some of the juniors and seniors on campus, maybe also attract graduate students who currently live in the community. Not that we don't welcome them all, but we have a housing crisis and a shortage. And if we could have more housing and some of that dedicated for these people during their educational years, we would all benefit from that. So UVM wants to rezone Trinity campus to allow to create more housing. Some of that, so it's 20 acres, but there's a steep slope behind, and we're not, California was smarter than we were. And I tried when I first got elected to deal with not having sloped land that you can't build on count as part of the acreage. And so like it or not, that means that you can develop more densely on a smaller parcel, even though because some of the land isn't developable. Having said that, so they have 20 acres, but not all acres are you're able to develop. So they want to put in, they have setbacks. And so setbacks from Colchester Avenue. One setback is, if you're familiar with the buildings, there's this big, if you go in the driveway where the light is, there's a white house, it's called the Villa. But to the left of that is a big brick, looks like a school. And that is Mann Hall, and that is 150 feet back from Colchester Avenue. And that was the setback that was put in place. So you couldn't build closer. So UVM is asking that that setback get adjusted to 110 feet from the Colchester Avenue. And that would allow buildings that could be up to 80 feet. And that seems appropriate to me. And the feedback, not many people have been following this, I must admit. But it seems appropriate to me. And I think that there's space. There's a map. Unfortunately, I didn't make copies, but if you go on to the Planning Commission website and the agenda for last night, I believe you can find this map. But it will show where they plan to put a structure like this. They're planning to put in around 400 beds, but then they also want to put in housing closer to Colchester Avenue in the green space. Initially, they wanted to put it 25 feet from the sidewalk. I've taken a lot of time, done my homework, gone to Redstone. Anyways, I've got them to now say that it will be 45 feet from the sidewalk. I didn't want to have us walled in and feel a tunnel effect, nor do I think it's great if you live right on top of a busy road. I think your quality of life is compromised. I'm not a planner, but that's how I feel. So anyways, they're going to set that back to 45 feet. And those units are supposed to be for grad students. This is still in planning. I don't agree with everything that I just shared with you, although I do support the 80 feet and the housing that they're going to create. I don't really support the housing closer to the road. And I can go through the fact that there are surface parking lots which I think they could build over and still maintain that parking and still create the housing they need. And I would prefer to see that go first before they take green space. So having said that, it's in planning. Planning meets on Tuesdays and they met last night. And they're going to meet in 2 weeks in November. And I think in 2 weeks, they will have a proposal that they can chew upon. So if anybody, they meet at 6:30, you can go by Zoom. You don't have to go to the meeting. Oftentimes you can't meet with them. Most of the time it's remote. But you can hear the presentation. There's a public forum. They're very willing to allow people to weigh in and make comments either in support or raise questions. And I believe that they hope to either bring forward some more questions and fine tune the zoning amendment or actually vote on it and then move it forward for public hearing. And just if all of you people don't know that, because I'm a political junkie, if they move it to a public hearing, I just want you to know, you'll have a chance to speak then. Then if they then need to act and send it to the city council, where it would go to the city council ordinance committee because it's a zoning amendment. So there will be opportunities for everybody who hasn't taken the time or had the time to get involved, to look at it and say, hey, I want to weigh in on this or not. So I know I've taken a lot of time, but I think it's an important proposal. I think that Richard Tate, the vice president, was there last night and was asked directly if indeed he thought this housing would provide relief to our community. And he said he could not guarantee that and he wasn't sure, which is a safe answer. But I think he's right. I think he's right because they've done their own internal surveys and juniors and seniors do not want to live on campus for any number of reasons. The type of housing, the restrictiveness, the fact that who wants to live in a dorm when you can live in your own apartment. So that's it. And thank you so much. And it's good to see everybody in person in the flesh.
Sorry, maybe next Tuesday.
They met yesterday and they'll meet in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks.
At 6 p.m. and where?
6:30.
6:30.
And usually it's remote, so you go on the agenda, the city website and the meeting agenda, and then if you click on planning commission at 6:30, it will expand and there's a link that you can get right into Zoom. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yep.
Who else would like to speak? Karen?
Thanks. I know you're running.
That's quite all right. I think we're gonna, this is
Hi.
good. And first of all, it's good. Second of all, I'm not gonna be facilitating like next month or the month after that. So, and COM is not gonna let people go on like this. So speak on.
Okay.
So
And so we're gonna, what I think we're gonna do is we're gonna take the bylaws and put them up till next month. And then give people the opportunity to speak now, all around on the big screen and in the room. So go ahead.
I could go to the meeting at 8. I'm sorry to have to run out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
one thing I wanted to say is a message from Jared Wood, my neighbor, who also talked to Jonathan about this. He thinks that there should be for every stop sign, there should be a stop line.
Yeah.
Meaning a place where the car should stop. I guess that was it. So anyway, I wanted to say that he and I share the frustration that many cars don't stop at stop signs. He's a walker, I'm a walker and a biker, and it happens all the time. You just have to be careful because they tend to cruise right through. But I also have a question on streets. Willard has, Willard is a state highway, and so they repaved it, but they did not level the, manholes or even the side streets like Loomis. What is it?
So what happened, they're gonna come back and do a second course of paving. And they wait so that engineering things that we don't understand can happen.
Okay, so they're coming back.
Yeah.
Oh,
They
okay.
do like more tight measurements. they might, like,
Okay,
chop
but
things.
it's been a while since they like abandoned the project and no one has come back and it just seems, it is very dangerous, especially on a bicycle if you hit one of those. So anyway, that was all. Well, thank you. I just wondered what happened. Like, did they run out of money and they just quit or what happened?
The asphalt in the summer and it heat, it makes it so it doesn't get hard like it should. So it kind of dips and dips. Same with sidewalks. So they waited in for it to settle. They'll come back
I see.
for another layer of asphalt.
Yeah, they need to level it up with like luminous and, like the side streets that they don't.
Yeah. Anyway.
That was all.
Thanks, Ben. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Jared's concern, and I wanted to ask the group a question. It's just kind of a general poll. He's very serious about this, and it makes a lot of sense to me. So if you think about the paint on the road and you think about street signs, they're all the same. It's signage for drivers. The line on the road is really a sign for drivers, whereas the stop sign is a sign for everybody. Can I just have a general show of hands, and you can use that little hand button if you're on Zoom. If you think that as a ward, we should write a letter about this and send it to DPW or bring it to the city council, pretty simply saying, and as I was talking to Jared about it, it occurred to me that if a stop sign gets knocked down, the city will put it back up, and they'll put it back up pretty quickly because it's a safety hazard. The same goes for that line. The line serves the same purpose, but it makes absolutely sure that cars stop at the intersection rather than halfway through it or some other place. So is this something that as a ward, we should, just a simple show of hands, and don't feel bad if you don't think it's a good idea, you don't have to raise your hand, but is this, if we wrote something up and then voted on it next month and then maybe sent it to DPW, is that something people might want to do?
And I would encourage that they start enforcing stopping and stop signs, because I know that's something they don't do and for years. I don't even know how, you're a chief, acting chief, whatever you call them. He just says they just don't do that, but I think they need to, they used to.
That is
Enforce
a separate
stop
issue.
I know.
Political piece rather
But
than
anyway, that's a safety.
it is a safety piece.
If we're gonna have a line, what's the point of having a line if there's nobody that's going to enforce that people stop the line? I mean, that's it.
Okay, I'm seeing enough. I saw enough hands that maybe the steering committee can write something up and we can talk about it next month. See where that goes forward from there. Who else would like to speak? Who else? Let's just go to the screen. Are there?
Carol.
Sarah?
No.
Carol?
Yeah. Me.
Carol? Carol? Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know about other candidates. They were all. I can speak that. All the candidates were invited to just introduce themselves informally tonight. So Tanya Vahovsky was not able to come. Phil Baruth was not able to come. And so Tanya, Philip, Martine, and Infinite are all running for the 3 Senate seats. Okay, and you're probably, hopefully you're aware of that. Troy Hedrick was not able to come. Brian did come, obviously, but they're the 2 that are running as our representatives, and we get 2 of them, so they're unopposed. So we continue to ask people to come to this time during Speak Out. So hopefully you'll hear from Tanya and Troy and Philip next time. I also, Dan Hill was not able to be here. He's on your agenda. I don't know, Sam, if you can show that handout. So Dan Hill is the traffic manager for the city, and he's really concerned about trying to fill the crossing guard positions. There are 17 open positions. And we have several copies of this if you're interested. So there are obviously there are the shifts, there's the pay, and then what they provide as well as the training and what's expected. So please consider doing this. It's a really important need that needs to be filled. And we don't have 17 places in the city where kids are crossing the street. We don't have coverage. Yes, Sharon.
So this has bothered me, but it's been going on for quite a while. And do we know what they're doing? Like, are principals going out to help kids cross, or what's happening? I mean, if we've got all these spots that don't have crossing guards, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I think
mean,
Dan would be the person to address that.
and I think that when he comes, or however, I think I would respectfully ask the steering committee to ask them how we're providing a safe crossing for children during this time, because it's really troubling me.
Okay. All right, we will do that. Thank you. So that's it from me, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Who else would like to speak in our extended speak out?
Carol?
Yeah.
Nah, so did, Brian is running again, correct?
Brian Sheena, yes.
Okay, and who was the other person?
Troy Hedrick. Okay, you're both, we have 2 seats, so they're both not opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oops, and
Christopher McCandless, and I live, as I said, across the street, and I'm also for the last 37 years been the person who's primarily responsible for the buildings on this property and caring for them and trying to encourage community groups to use them. So I'm delighted that you all are here tonight. I have 2 concerns that I'd like to have a group like this consider going forward. One is that as someone who lives on Prospect Street, I have been struck by the reduction in traffic that has been caused by the construction down at the other end of Prospect Street. People drive past my house at 40 and 50 miles an hour regularly. The number of broken mirrors that I have counted over the last 30 years on this side of Prospect Street defies description, especially when trucks and buses meet each other. So I have wondered whether there's ever been any consideration of turning Prospect Street into a one-way street. And I just raised that as a question. My second thought is that in my entire voting life, I have never failed to support a school bond issue or a tax, an increase in taxes for schools. But during the reassessment process that happened, my taxes went up by $3,400, which was a bit of a shock. And now I'm led to believe that were I to vote for this school bond, they will probably go up another $1,800. And I don't know what to do. I feel at a sort of moral crossroads. And so I invite conversation about that, not necessarily tonight, but I'm feeling like maybe for the first time in my life, I need to think about what the implications are of I know that we need a new school. There's no doubt about that. I don't quite understand why there aren't more federal government funds available or being sought for this project. But I am worried about the implication on my family for what is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. And we do have this on the agenda for later, so there will be Q&A at that point. And thank you for the input. Other people who want to speak? Angie got her hand up a little while ago.
Hello. I have a couple of things to say. One is in response to Sharon, something that you said. First of all, we miss you terribly. And when we're in your room, I keep looking around like, where's Sharon? So it's a delight to have you back here. And very happy to hear you speak, because you've always spoken with a lot of wisdom and thought. And that means a lot in a community that isn't always what happens these days, as you know. So one is to thank you, and another is to address an issue that you spoke about, which was the Trinity campus. And I want to say just very generally that I have been hugely frustrated by the city and the university being at forever loggerheads about what to do about the housing problem in the city. And it just feels as if there's some unspoken agreement that they're not ever going to talk about. And that we, the members of the community, who we're fine with having some college students in our community, but it's making it very difficult for people who have of limited means to get a toehold in our beautiful city of Burlington, Vermont, which we would love to have. So I just like to say, I'm delighted to hear about Trinity campus. I'm delighted to hear that they're planning more beds. I'm not so delighted to hear that Vermont just accepted, the University of Vermont just accepted the largest freshman class in history. And will they be able to house them? I don't know, but I just want to bring that point up, that I wish the university and the city would actually talk with each other about what the crisis it is for individuals, for our community, that so many students have to live off campus. The other thing that I want to address, and I will make it short, it has to do with the amount of suspension in the community. And many of people have spoken about this tonight. The amount of suspension in the community about public safety. And in our neighborhood up here, it's become a little tenuous and nerve-wracking. And I want to say that there were city councilors, some of whom were ours, who made a very quick decision in 2020 to, and I won't say defund the police, those words are poison, but our police department has been decimated by actions that the city council took without really anticipating what could happen as a result of their quick actions. And what has happened is that the police force is A, decimated, B, discouraged, and doesn't have such a great reputation as a place to work. We need police officers. We respect police officers. I do. And what I want to say is that there is a lot of anger and dissension in the community about that which happened in 2020, which is painfully trying to be rectified. I think that a simple acknowledgement or even an apology by the council members who acted too quickly without thinking, an acknowledgement that they may have taken an ill-advised step. I personally think that would help in the amount of anger and stress we feel in this community. That I'd like to hear somebody say, we acted too quickly. It wasn't right. We're going to try to do better. We're sorry. I know that one of our city councilors has reached out and taken some actions, and I appreciate that Zerai has done that. I'm very sorry that she isn't here tonight, so that I could say that to her personally. I wish she were here tonight. So I think, of course, I could go on, because I always could. But I want to thank you for the opportunity for speaking up both about the mess of the university and the mess of the people who argue about the police, who we need as to remind us as deterrents and to be civil members of our community and to remember to respect each other again, which I think we've lost. Thank you.
Who else would like to speak? Maybe one more person so we can pretend to get back on.
I'll keep it short.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I just want to say, I mean, there's a bunch of things that folks brought up that gotta get more regularly. Yeah, on my way here, I was going on Mansfield Ave and Colchester, right there, like taking the right onto that like shared use path. And someone like rolled right through the line, like I don't think was looking, because I was in the bike lane there. I was like, that's cool, and it just judge over. It was fine, but literally just happened. That always happens. I like to work down that, like where you go through what's it, Winooski and yeah, where they're repaving there and like hit that that manhole cover this morning, which was good morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was not great. Yeah. The other thing I was going to mention was just Carol had said that there needed some help on the NPA steering committee. And I've been trying to carve out time for a couple of years now to try to be more active in NPA stuff. And the third part-time job that I have finally is wrapping up. So I'm stopping some like remote jobs in New Hampshire. And so, yeah, I'm really interested if help is needed. If folks will have me, I'm going to help out. Yeah, and I guess that's all I got.
Great. Thank you, Carter. We can talk next month about the bylaws, but we would welcome steering committee is certainly welcome beyond the steering committee. It's a matter of a community vote. The NPA would vote on it. But we definitely need the support. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda. We're going to skip the bylaws. I will probably post links again in Front Porch Forum once or twice before the next meeting, and then we can go through it. And I think what I did was the bylaws themselves are only 3 pages long. They're not too long, but I also created a PowerPoint presentation which summarizes them. It's like the net of the net, and then I could do the net of the net of the net too if you wanted. But just so that next month maybe we can just go through them and move on. That's because Ward 1 shortly to be changed, but Ward 1 does not have a set of bylaws for the NPA. Next on the agenda is the charter change committee about legal resident non-citizen voting. And Councilor Travers, you're here to talk about that, I think, right?
That's right.
Excellent.
All right.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, great. So thanks very much for having me. My name is Ben Travers. I represent Ward 5 on the City Council, newly elected a few months ago. Sorry I can't be there with you in person this evening. I have childcare duties here at home. My youngest go to preschool at Full Circle Preschool, which is connected to Ohavi Zedek Synagogue there. So I'm driving down North Prospect Street every morning and afternoon to the extent I can as of late, and consider Ward 1 to sort of be my home away from home because of the kids in preschool there. And I've always been curious about the meeting house, so I'm sorry to not be able to be there in person to see it, but I'm glad to see it virtually over the screen. I'm here tonight in my role as one of 3 members of the City Council's Charter Change Committee. This is my second City Council meeting of the evening. I had one earlier on in the Sharon Busher Very Much Alive conference room. And here we are now meeting with you all. The other members of the Charter Change Committee are Jean Bergman and Sarah Carpenter. And we as a committee have endeavored to go around to all the NPAs as part of a broader community engagement session to talk about the fact that we have been tasked with looking into as a committee whether to put a ballot question on the town meeting day ballot again in March with respect to all resident voting. And the measure that we're looking at, we define a legal resident as someone who's not otherwise able to register to vote. They are a legal resident here, but they are a non-US citizen. This is a matter that was on the ballot, some of you may recall, in Burlington in 2015, and was voted down on the ballot at that time. The city council considered back in 2020 whether to put this matter back on the ballot again, but at that time that the council elected against it. And it was, at least in part at that time, I wasn't on the council, but I certainly recall the discussion around it, concern about whether we had really put the time in to engage the community, to inform them about the work that's going on and to answer any questions there may be, particularly from folks who will be impacted the most by this, which are non-US citizens who would gain an opportunity to register to vote in local elections. And they understandably have had and will continue to have a lot of questions surrounding the matter. So if I could just provide you sort of a very high level overview of what this would do, is again, if Burlington voters voted in favor of this in March, the proposal would allow non-US citizens in Burlington over the age of 18 to register to vote in local elections. So what would that mean is they could vote for local officers such as city councilors, for the school board, for ward clerks and inspectors of election, and of course for the mayor. And they would be able to vote on local questions such as future charter change measures or school bond votes or other measures that are unique to the Burlington ballot. We've been working very closely with Jillian Nanton, who works in CEDO, works very closely with a program that's relatively new to CEDO called the Trusted Community Voices Program, that's been working with Burlington's diverse communities to relay to them the work that we're doing, the potential that this may be before voters in March. For folks who are interested and want additional information, we have put up a website, which is at burlingtonvt.gov/all-resident-voting. And I'd be happy to send you that link if you'd like to put it into the minutes. I'm very grateful that Jillian and CEDO, when you go there, there's an FAQ page, which has been translated into multiple different languages for folks who may require that in learning more about it. And we are out there to let folks know about this work before moving ahead as a committee and then ultimately as a council. I'll make a couple other points here and then would be happy to answer any questions you all have, which is that among the things that have changed since 2015, when Burlington voters voted a similar measure down, is at that point in time, Burlington would have been one of the first in the state to take this measure. But since then, both Montpelier and Winooski have proceeded to stand up all resident voting with quite a bit of success. In Winooski, since this was put into effect, a few dozen folks who were not otherwise eligible to vote have registered to vote, and nearly all those individuals who registered to vote came out and voted in their last election. So that's a very promising sign. There was some concern about whether or not, because this is a charter change, the state legislature and ultimately the governor would sign off on these measures. And what we've seen in Montpelier and what we've seen in Winooski is that, notwithstanding some historical reservations we've heard from folks in Montpelier, that these charter changes were permitted and have gone into effect. We've been working actually very closely with folks from Winooski in particular, including Mayor Lott, to learn about what their process has been and try to get over any growing pains now before we put this before the voters. So that is where we are at right now as a committee. Again, this should be, well, if the committee votes this out, which I anticipate it will be heard before the full council, and then ultimately is a matter that would be on the ballot in March. And if folks have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them to answer them. And if for any reason I don't know the answer at this point in time, sometimes those are the best questions, and I will be taking those back to the committee and can get answers back to you all.
Good question.
Can I?
Sure.
Let me just, Dan, let me just ask you, what has the committee gleaned from the people that would now have an opportunity to vote? I can't imagine that it isn't all positive. But I mean, the point that it was Councillor Roof who was going to move this in 2020 and then pulled it because there was some criticism that the community wasn't well informed about this, and that it was premature to move it without doing that legwork. So has there been any insights? I know that one of the counselors that still serves felt very strongly about the need for people to be citizens before they had a chance to exercise their right to vote. But that was the only statement that I recall in 2020. So can you give a synopsis of what you've gleaned from the community?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Sharon. So as far as I know, at least from folks who are on the council, as it stands right now, I've not heard that same concern at this point in time, at least with respect to sort of preserving citizenship as being a requirement to vote in any election. I will tell you that is something that I've heard from folks in my ward and from folks throughout the city. The committee has received that feedback from some folks who really believe that voting should be a privilege of citizenship, and that folks who are not citizens should not be awarded that privilege, for lack of a better term. It's not an opinion that I personally share, but we have heard that feedback. From my own perspective, I think particularly over the last couple of years or so, I think folks are rightfully so taking a look at democracy and the importance of participating in that democracy in a different light than we were back in 2015 when Burlington voters looked at this the first go around. So that's where I stand on it, but we have heard that concern. With respect to, again, those communities that obviously would be most impacted, which are those who would gain the opportunity to register to vote in local elections. Generally speaking, I would say the responses that we've seen thus far have been positive, and folks are excited about the opportunity to participate in their local community. Historically, I think there's been some questions around the logistics of how this will work. If you look at the state voter registration form as an example, you're required to enter in a driver's license or personal ID number, or if you don't have a driver's license, you're required to enter a social security number. And of course, if you're not a US citizen, you wouldn't have a social security number. So technically speaking, the application put out by the state would require you're having a driver's license or personal ID, at least to enter the number. And so there's been some questions around some of those logistics and whether they would present hurdles to certain folks having an opportunity to register. Those are logistics that we're working with the city clerk's office to figure out, and whether, Burlington would have to this process on its own, because folks would only be registering to vote in local elections. It's not something that we would forward along to the state like we do with other applications for folks to be able to register for state elections. So we are working through some of those logistical hurdles that folks have rightfully had questions about how it would operate, but I don't anticipate them being hurdles to our ultimately getting this done.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if we could just take a very quick 5 minutes for you. You're also a member of the redistricting working committee, right?
Yes, I got an email from Carol. I understand unfortunately, my colleagues in the council are not there tonight, so I certainly would be willing to provide feedback on redistricting, or I'm mindful of your time this evening, but if folks have any other questions about business before the council, I'd be open to answering that as well, but certainly respect your agenda and your time.
I'm disrespecting the agenda tonight quite a lot, so
Okay.
don't worry about that. But I think if we can get the school district on at 8:30, we might be able to settle everything out. It'd be fine. So if you could take 5 minutes to talk a little bit about where you think the working group is going and what are the big considerations. And then we can send questions and suggestions to Zariah after that. Or to
Great.
you and
Yeah, so I suspect many folks in the room there and tuned in online are aware of this, but just for the sake of a recap, we heard from some folks during your public comment period about the fact that our House and Senate districts were recently redistricted at the state level. Because of the recent census here at the local level, we are also required to look at redistricting and moving our boundaries of our wards and districts. This is in large part actually because of Ward 1 and the construction of Bayberry Commons. A lot more folks have moved into Ward 1, which has created a situation where we need to, we're required to have, for the most part, equal populations between the wards, which is why we have to take on this effort. It started with an ad hoc redistricting committee, which I know folks from Ward 1 participated in. They provided a number of suggestions with respect to what they would like the council and voters to ultimately be looking at and considering how to proceed. Since then, the council's received a number of variations of different maps and proposals that would either keep the number of wards and districts the same or change the number of wards to 7 wards, or we've seen a 12 ward map as well. And there's been different questions as to whether we keep a ward and district model where we have councilors running in individual wards, as well as in the East District there in Ward 1, where you have councilors representing 2 wards. For the most part, I would say, while the discussion hasn't been formally narrowed down, my impression is that the discussion has been narrowed down to one where we're looking at 2 different variations of maps, one being a map with 7 wards, the other being a map with 8 wards. I think there's still some outstanding questions as to what that would then mean as to how many individuals are on the council, whether or not we maintain having 12 councilors, or there's been some folks who have been promoting an 8 ward map that would move us up to 16 councilors if you had 2 councilors in each ward. In order to keep this discussion moving forward, at our last council meeting last night, there was a motion to create a subgroup of folks, myself included, along with Mark Barlow, your Ward 1 councilor, Zariah Hightower, and the Ward 3 councilor, Joe McGee. The 4 of us have been informally working together, seeing if we can try to find some consensus as to how we can move forward as a council on these maps. Now we'll be formally working together on the maps that we have, and we'll be looking forward to continuing that work together and getting some maps on the agenda for you all to come to public hearing before the full council and provide feedback on. But again, if folks have any questions or comments right now as to their thinking, would certainly be happy to take it, but that's where we're at right now as a small redistricting group.
okay, thank you. Will the working group meetings be open meetings?
Yeah, so that was a discussion that came up last night. I think they have to be, right? I mean, now that the council sort of formally stood up this small group, my planning and my intention is that those meetings will now be warned. And certainly folks who are interested would be more than open, and I would welcome folks to come and attend.
Okay, great. So that if people have questions or comments or input, that would be the place at this point that we should be providing it at those meetings.
Yeah, and I think that the benefit of this small group, right, is I think it's really going to be built as a working session, try to sort of knock down some of the formalities that you find before the council meeting and have these meetings be working sessions, back and forth dialogue where we would welcome further input from the community.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
And let's move on to the Burlington School District. If I could come on over and we left you a set of chairs.
Oh, great.
Or you can stand, at the front of the room.
Oh, no.
It's the sitting hour, I think.
Well, we very much appreciate your being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Kathy's here. Do you want to come up with us or do you want to stay where?
There's three. chairs. And if you can just use this microphone for the recording.
Sure.
that would be great.
Okay.
And we do have a presentation.
Yeah, they're gonna, he's gonna show it up and they'll forward or get us to the slides and we need to change it. Ready for whenever you guys say. Okay. Yeah, we're ready. Yeah, we're ready. Yeah, bring it up. Sure.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you all. This is a great place. I've seen it driving by to go to the office, but never been in here. It's a great place. I'm Tom Flanagan. I'm the superintendent of Burlington Schools.
And I'm Joe Wythe. I'm with White and Burke Real Estate Advisors. Our firm is the project manager for this project.
And I'm Kathy Alwald, the East District School Commissioner from Wards 1 and 8.
Great. And we handed out a couple of pieces of paper for you. The first is a one-pager where we tried to just get every bit of the biggest information or most important information in one place. And then we have a frequently asked questions document that is a companion to that. We are not going to speak off of those exactly tonight, but we can take questions on those. We're going to talk off of the presentation, and Joe and I will go back and forth. We're available to, what we'll probably do is try to run through in about 10 minutes, and then we can open it for discussion if that sounds okay to everybody. Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for having us. All right. So first thing that we wanted to make sure that you knew about, we'll go to first slide, is the project history of why are we in this position where we need to build a Burlington High School and Burlington Technical Center by 2025. We're aiming for the August of 2025. And if we hit our timelines, we can meet that deadline, but it is an aggressive deadline. So, but not one where we're hurrying either. So we feel good about the timeline. So the first thing is takes us back to 2020, even before 2020. We knew that the high school needed to be renovated, seriously renovated, in, I don't know, 2015, 14,
Oh, we knew,
before that,
yeah.
because it wasn't accessible. It didn't have it needed major HVAC upgrades. It needed windows. It needed a bunch of major upgrades just to be a school that was built for to be accessible, really, and a space that is usable, and accessibility specifically related to individuals with disabilities, because it's a series of different buildings with runways in between. There are lots of stairs, and it's a really inaccessible building. And so that was one of the issues. You can also see accessibility, outdated learning spaces, failing mechanical systems. The building really desperately needed repair that was significant. And the the people of Burlington, the citizens voted to approve a bond of $70 million for the renovations. And that was called the re-envisioning project. As a part of that project, we started to look at we were required to look at the environmental condition of the building. And we learned that there were PCBs that are a toxic chemical that has cancer causing, that is cancer and other health impacting chemical, that was in the air. And then we learned just prior to the start of the school year in 2020, which was actually the first day of my time as a superintendent here, literally the first day of school. I got a call from the mayor's office, actually, because they got a call from the state saying the day before saying we were going to need to shut the building down. And I was like, it was COVID. So I was thinking it was a COVID related thing. And I didn't really know about PCBs, but we learned about those PCBs. We met with the EPA and the Department of Environmental Conservation, and we learned from them that the building needed to be closed so that we could better understand. We got the first set of test results back, and we were waiting for more test results from the air quality to come back. What we learned was that the air, from the EPA and the Department of Environmental Conservation, that in a school building and sort of outside of a factory setting, these were the highest levels of PCBs that they'd ever seen in a building. And so it was really significant, and they were really high in the F building, which is in the back, and they kind of got lower and lower in the air as they moved down, as you kind of move down the hill, but still even throughout the building, these PCBs exist. And we learned that after the air quality testing, you have to then test building materials. And so we learned that those PCBs are in the ceiling, in the light ballast. So they're in the ceiling, they're in the glue that you put the tiles that affix the tiles to the floor, and they're in the windows. And in each of those places, PCBs over time release. And so they've gone into the foundation into the flooring down in, and they've gone up to 2 feet into the cement around the windows. And so if you think about, when we talk about the building, in some ways it's like a car that is totaled. If you look at the walls, the windows we would have to replace, and 2 feet around the windows, except for the gym. If you look at most of the other buildings, that means there ends up being no more walls. And we also have it in the floor. So at that point, it really is, it's not salvageable as a building anymore. And so we borrowed we bonded for the $70 million, but we didn't borrow the $70 million. We used $4 million of the $70 million to understand the PCBs and deal with the PCBs, but we did not borrow, or we are not using the additional $66 million from that bond. So that all just was either borrowed and given back, or part of it was borrowed and given back, and part of it was never borrowed. And so that money just was never impacted taxpayers beyond the $4 million that we used for the PCB to get to the point where we realized the PCBs were going to not allow us to continue with that project. And so I think that gets us, so that's the history that gets us to where we are. So we can go to the next slide. And then this speaks a little bit to the more recent history. So the more recent history is, we did a public engagement process around where the building should be. We looked at 25 or so, a bunch of different sites around town, and we chose Institute Road. We did a survey of the community, and we got feedback from the experts that we work with. And it was clear that Institute Road, because we owned the land and because we were able to just build right
there was a space for us to build right on the land. It actually ended up being the least expensive, or projected to be the least expensive and least complicated of options for us to build. And also an option that many people, most people, really preferred because of the campus feel, because of the fields that are there, and the space that's available, the proximity to the bike path, the lake, the Arms Forest, and everything that site offers. Once we chose that site, then we looked at 5.5. There was one that was, we looked at about five different designs. So the design team developed 5 different designs of what that building could look like. And one of those designs had a different option to it. So that's why I said 5.5. We ended up choosing option C, which was the least expensive of the 5 options, and also the most energy efficient and the most efficient kind of use of space. So still allowing us to build a great building, but also being as mindful as we can of the impact to our community, to taxpayers on this building. So we've been really working hard to balance at each step of the way, having a great space for learning that is modern, that is accessible, that is flexible, that is connected to the woods and the bike path and the lake and the fields, and creates flow and community, and access for the community, but also that is the most mindful of the impact to taxpayers, because we know that is significant. So as we've moved, so you can see where the design sits, and we have some design pictures we'll show you in a minute. But you can see kind of the general design, so it's compact, but there is still some outdoor space, and there's lots of light and access and sight lines to the outdoors, and common spaces. So you'll see some of that. We did decide half of the students we have a Burlington High School, which is 900 or so students, and we also have a Burlington Technical Center. Half of the students in the Burlington Technical Center are from Burlington. The other half are from the sending districts across the region. So 9 different high schools can send their students to our technical center. So half is our students, half are from the region. And so we decided that we should build half of the Burlington Technical Center at the site here. And we were fortunate that our aviation teacher and our technical center director applied for a grant, an earmark from Senator Leahy, and received the award for $10 million to build a program at the airport that is related to aviation. And so we are able to move our 2 aviation programs, advanced manufacturing, pre-tech, and probably auto out to the airport. And so that was just happened at the right time. And we ended up being able to pull $20 million out of the project. And we'll be able to use that 10 million plus other funding from the airport and from other support to build that program at the airport. So we're really actually excited about that, because it puts the technical center a little bit further into the region, a little closer to the sending districts, and also right next to the field where this work is happening with Beta, with the Vermont Flight Academy, with the airport, all looking for people who have transferable skills, but also specific skills related to aviation. So it's a really good option that we were just really fortunate that it all came together at this time. And so we also have throughout this process been looking for ways to secure funding. I'll talk a little bit more about that afterward, after Joe talks about the design. But where we are now is that we have the school board approved a $165 million bond request, and that is an up to. We really are committed to raising funds to get that $165 million, to not have to borrow all of that. And we're already making progress. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, the money part later. And we're headed, and city council unanimously approved with support of the mayor, the bond placement on the ballot. And now the bond language for this project will be on the November 8th ballot. And those mail home ballots are coming out in probably around September 28th. So I'll pass it to Joe to talk through the schematic design.
All right, thank you. So this slide shows our proposed site plan for the new high school and tech center on the north side of Institute Road. So our plan is to demo and fully remediate the contaminated buildings that currently exist on the site, and then construct a new 250,000 square foot high school and tech center. The new building will be 4 stories. It'll be relatively compact in size to minimize environmental impact. And as you can see, it's pretty much centered on the site with an orientation to Institute Road. Access to the site will be from Institute Road. And just to highlight a few of the design features, there will be 2 main prominent entrances to the new building, a south entrance and a north entrance. The south entrance will face Institute Road, and the north entrance will serve the new parking area on the north side, as well as the bus drop off and pickup area back there. Both entrances will provide access to a 2-level student commons, which is being designed to pretty much be the heart and soul of the school and the hub of student activity. There will be a significant amount of seating and space in this common area for students to dine, gather, and collaborate. The cafeteria will be on the first level of this student commons area. There will be a 750-seat auditorium with balcony and a 3-station gym, both of which will be accessed off the student commons. And the 3rd station of the gym will actually serve as a community gym with a separate entrance that can be closed off from the remainder of the school, so it can be used by the community during evenings or on weekends. We're also proposing a strong connection to the outdoors, as Tom had said earlier, which is something that we heard very loud and clear from the students and from teachers as something that is very important and highly desirable in a new high school and tech center. So in addition to maintaining and enhancing the connections to the Arms Forest, which is to the north of the school, we're also proposing 2 outdoor learning areas, which they're kind of hard to see on this plan, but they're those 2 circular features. There's one on the east side of the building and one on the west side, and these are really intended, they're going to be designed as small amphitheater type outdoor learning centers. Yeah, sure. And so these will be areas that where classes can be held on nice days. Probably not too many in the winter, but
Here.
Yeah.
And then
Actually down where that number 1 is, just to the west of the building. Yeah, right there.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then this outdoor space here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and then the courtyard in the middle of the building there. So a lot of areas.
Institute Road, here's North Ave,
Yeah.
Arms Forest up here.
So just a couple more highlights. The building and site are being designed to be highly energy efficient and sustainable. We will be pursuing a LEED Silver or better certification. Fossil fuel free energy sources will be used, including primary use of electrification with geothermal heating and cooling, and also solar photovoltaics. The roof structure will be solar ready for installation of solar units by a third-party provider who will own and operate those solar units. There will be as Tom said earlier, there'll be a generous natural light throughout the building. Again, that's something we heard loud and clear from the students and the teachers as something being, critical for a school building. That's something that they don't currently have at the downtown high school. And so they've been able to experience what it's like being in a building that has no windows. Durable, long-lasting, low-maintenance finishes will be used inside and out. And then finally, there will be extensive bicycle connections and bicycle parking and improved pedestrian access with new walkways and paths. So if you just want to, we can scroll through some of the renderings that we have here. So this is the south facade of the new building, looking at it from the intersection of North Avenue and Institute Road. So that'd be this kind of the south frontage that looks on Institute Road. Go ahead. And then this is the north main entrance off of that parking lot and bus drop off pickup area on the north side of the building. Go ahead. This is a rendering of a typical classroom with plenty of window area for natural light. Next slide, please. And then this is a rendering of the two-level student commons that I talked about. So again, plenty of seating for students to meet, eat lunch, collaborate. The cafeteria will be on this first level. And then there's a stairwell leading up to the second level. And you can see there's stadium seating off to the side of the stairs. Again, more spaces for students to congregate and collaborate. Next photo or next rendering, please. Rendering of the new auditorium with the balcony. Next slide. And then this is a rendering of the library and media center, again, showing plenty of glass, a lot of natural light, open floor plan for today's modern school library and media center. And I think that might be it. Okay, so I'll give it back to you.
Thank you very much. So as I said, we've been really mindful of the impact of this pending bond vote on taxpayers, and so you can see that the overall cost to the BSD budget is on a $165 million bond is there, and then the tax rate increase. This is on a $370,000 home is 15.67%, and the other percentages are also there. And one of the things that we've been working to explain to this people of Burlington is that the school board, multiple school boards have been working and advocating at the state to make sure that the funding for our city schools is equitable. And it has been inequitable historically, where the wealthier districts have had a lower tax impact because of what we call the weighted pupil, which is essentially how much an individual student is weighted or funded or gets funded based on their weight. And what that has done is essentially given more resources to wealthier districts. So Essex, South Burlington, and CVSD, some of our close neighbors who are also colleagues and friends of ours, they are benefiting from an inequitable funding model. And we are being harmed by an inequitable funding model that does two problematic things to us. One, the citizens of Burlington are committed to a high quality education for their children. And so people are paying higher taxes than they should have to for less service. So we have what this will do is fix two things for us that we can't exactly predict. We can't predict exactly how, like the percent of impact it will have on taxes yet. But what it will do is it will ultimately mean that we don't need to tax as much for the level of service that we need. And so this 15%, if you look at the way that districts across the region are impacted, you'll see some districts have a plus 15%, meaning they are going to benefit 15%, and some that are negative 15%. And so we are moving in a positive direction as it relates to the weighted pupil. And it's about 15%. But that doesn't mean that it will totally balance this 15%, because some of it needs to go to higher quality services that are particularly underweighted now for English language learners and for students who are in poverty and in secondary schools. So the school board did a great job of working on that, and that's been part of what we've been doing to support taxpayers and improve our schools moving forward. And I think we know it will have an offset here. We don't know exactly how much. And so we want to be really careful not to promise something that isn't accurate. And so we're just showing you what the tax rate increase would be on the $165 million bond without any of that weighted pupil calculated in here. So if you go to the next slide, this is a little much to look at, but we do have a sort of calculator that you can see that shows how this impacts individual home values. And I think I just have one more slide. Do you want to hold? Do you want to ask your question now?
We're running out of time, and you said you would take 10 minutes.
I know, it took too much time. Yeah, sorry. One more slide. Sound like a plan?
Maybe we can stay a few minutes.
Yeah, please. I mean, it's no offense, but I've seen this part before.
Got it.
so we
Sorry about
really
that.
wanna have
Okay,
questions.
well then let's talk.
Go ahead. Who else?
Well, why don't we ask questions?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, one question, is the 66 million that is left over from what we voted the bond before,
Yes.
is that part of this 165 million, or is that in addition? We still are bonding for that?
No, that 66 million was half of that we never borrowed, and the other half of that we borrowed and are gonna return. So we're not using those funds. So that will have no impact on taxpayers. It's as if it never happened.
Okay.
The 165 is totally different.
I'll let Sharon go, but then I have another.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm a broken record, because you've never seen me before, but you've heard my voice. Because I follow this through the planning commission and the DRB with your sketch plan, et cetera. But I have two questions. One, I'm asking on behalf of someone else who isn't here tonight. And his concern is when you're talking about contamination, he feels that no one has answered whether or not, I understand it's around the windows and it's in the foundation. His concern is, have you done soil boring tests so that you know how deep it is and how much earth you might have to remove? Or is that an unknown that might add some costs that won't be well received if you have to come up with some additional funds?
Sure, yeah, my understanding is that they have done all of, they have done those soil boring tests.
And who would have done those? And are they on file with the city? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, we have all that information. Yeah, we have an environmental consulting team that's been working on all of the testing. And they're currently working on a remediation plan that will be presented to the state, the Department of Environmental Conservation and EPA for approval. But they've this environmental team and district representatives have been meeting with EPA and DEC on a monthly basis for the last 2 years. So everyone is fully aware of the extent of the contamination, and they're working on an acceptable plan to remediate.
So that cost, although it's still not actually nailed down, is in the total
Yes.
bonding
Yes.
cost, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So you've anticipated a certain dollar amount to address not only the foundation and the taking down of the building and getting rid of the building, but some soil remediation also.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's an important point that we haven't talked about a lot, but about 25 million of the project is the removal and remediation of the building and the site. So we have characterized the soil, we understand where the soil is contaminated, and it has not thankfully gone out too far from the building.
Okay.
And so we know where that ends, and we generally know the extent of the soil contamination.
So that's where the person who isn't here, Karen's neighbor, and and my question is, and this is the one that I've asked the mayor about at the Board of Finance, and I asked at the city council, and the superintendent, you did pick up on this, is that I feel that I'm hoping that the school, I'm hoping the community has gone to Montpelier, and I read your communication that Montpelier said, look at other avenues, but I'm not satisfied
I'm glad
with
you
that.
read that part of it.
I did, I read that,
So
I,
it's a
you know,
local issue.
yes, well, I don't agree. And I feel that it's a community issue, and I'm just going to be very brief on this. I feel that, first of all, they applied a more stringent standard than the EPA did, the state did. And then when they realized that they couldn't really apply that statewide, they pulled back and changed the level. But in the meantime, they harmed Burlington students. We can never take away that harm. But financially, they made Burlington students learn remotely. There was a cost there. They made Burlington renovate Macy's, and I know the state did some money for you on that, but I don't remember what that is. But they made us go that route, and that cost us some money too. It wasn't just the state. Then they, because of all of this, we were going to build a new high school for 70 million. They delayed that. Now construction costs and materials are more expensive. So in my estimation, in my old estimation, and I've run this by another past member of the Board of Finance, I think they owe us around $15 million. I'm not asking for the world, but I'm serious about this. And I really was hoping that the mayor and you, the school administration, would go and have not a confrontational conversation, but a factual conversation with Montpelier about these various phases and the harm and the financial costs that are incurred by this community. And I do feel that they should contribute somewhat to this new school.
Yeah, I agree, and collectively, not that I can speak for everybody, but we collectively agree with everything you just said. One of the reason I dwell a little bit on the per pupil is the impact to taxpayers that will offset some, but also that what we heard in Montpelier from behind the scenes when I made a direct ask to the Secretary of the Agency of Education. He came to Burlington in April, and we walked Macy's, and we went to the old school, and he said it was one of the worst schools in our state. And I agreed, and I said, yes, and we need 30 million to remediate the PCBs and 20 million to build the technical center. And he said, I hear you. And so we did make a direct ask. And also we did receive $3.5 million to build to do Macy's from the governor. He did give us those funding with the legislature, but he helped us make that happen. But what we were hearing is that people were talking at the State House about how we had already gotten our funding through the weighted pupil. And we disagree with that because that is something different. And so what we're doing now is we're really pushing on, we're applying for grants in the current fiscal year budget that we're eligible for. And so we're going to do that. We think there's funding there. And then we're also going to gear up for the next legislative session. We're really serious. And we have an MOU with the city around our commitment to seeking funds to lower the borrowing that we need to do on this 165 bond. But we're really committed to continuing to seek funding. And one of the things that I think we may need to mobilize around, like we mobilized around the weighted pupil, is construction aid. And so that's something that we'll probably start mobilizing around for the next legislative session. We are working with someone who's lobbying in Montpelier, who helped us with the weighted pupil, who really understands how this stuff works. So we're really, really committed to continuing to do that work. And then in the current budget, there's $32 million for PCB work. And so we think that's across the whole state. So we're not going to get all of that. But we believe strongly we're going to be eligible for some of those funds once the rules are written and we're able to apply. And there are other avenues as well.
Also talk about federal grants that.
Right. So we're also eligible for federal grants through the EPA, clean water. There are environmental grants. There's grants that we can go for with the Burlington Electric Department. So there are a couple of good opportunities there. There are a lot of opportunities for us within this current budget to apply for and we think receive significant funding.
I just want to tell you that, I'm on a fixed income, but I have said no to a number of the bonds that have come forward from the city because I was saving my money. Of course, I couldn't because everyone else supported those bonds, but I saved my money for the schools and you've got my vote. I am definitely, and I'm trying to convince people to make that sacrifice, but it's a big sacrifice.
Yes.
And I really want this to happen. I really want this school to happen. So
thank you.
Anything you can do, anything that any one of us, well, anybody that supports it can do to help. Certainly I offer any assistance I can give you. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We are really going to be aggressive to seeking additional funding. And we think we'll be able to bring money to this.
Karen, what Carter? I mean, you'll get your last stuff. Check your MP.
Oh, it's mine.
Well, no, I just appreciate following it through the news for a little bit now and hearing Kathy talk about it. But I appreciate the equity lens that you all took with it. There's one thing you said when talking about the energy that is going to be used and not relying on fossil fuels. Is natural gas and biofuels in that mix that you're kind of not fossil fuel?
Yeah. Yeah, the architects would be better suited to answer this, but my understanding is that they're moving forward with designing a system that won't require the use of any fossil fuels. However, one of the things they're still trying to figure out is whether gas is still needed for some of the curriculum, like some of the labs and things like that. But they've already decided that they're going to design and construct the new kitchen without the use of gas, which is new for the high school. But the issue of whether or not some of the science classes still need gas is still out there and needs to be determined.
But the heating
and cooling will not use fossil fuels.
Did you say geothermal?
Yep.
Wow.
There's good geothermal access on the land itself, which is good. And the building will be net zero ready, which means that as technology advances, we'll be able to generate the energy we need to run the building on the site. But we also need for some advancement around solar and other things to make that happen. But it's going to be a very energy efficient building. And that's actually one of the reasons we chose this building that sort of compact design allows it to be more energy efficient too.
So this is kind of a basic thing, but everything that was in the school, like the library supplies and the desks and, you know, anything, I mean, what's happened to all that? Is anything gonna be reused or? And like you mentioned that the gym was fine, but we're still getting a whole new gym anyway, and all of A building is going. You're
Well,
getting
the
rid of-
gym is not fine. The gym is, we're able to use the gym for small parts of time. And A building is more than just the gym. So that gym space is one of the lower airborne places with the lower
Okay.
airborne PCBs. But there are higher airborne PCBs in other parts of A building. And so you get to a point where there's just no reusing. And it's also not just about air quality. Once we learned the problem in the air, we then had to test the materials, and we're regulated on how much PCBs are in the materials. And so those spaces still have PCBs in the materials. So yeah, so that's, and in terms of we actually, I don't know, we have a recently retired principal whose name is Shelley Matthias. She was at Edmonds Elementary School. Yeah, she's wonderful. She's gonna help us project manage getting out of the old VHS and starting with A building. We've taken a lot out and are using it at VHS. We also have more at VHS that we will keep, and we have storage. We're gonna rent some storage on Pine Street. And then there's some stuff there that is of value that we don't need anymore. And so we're gonna have to figure out how to have people have access to that, whatever however that looks. And then there's also a lot of stuff that's old. I mean, sometimes, you know, we tend to hold on to things, right? And so there's some of that too. So it's a balancing act, but we are working on that. And we're also gonna go on catalog. People are asking, there are a lot of plaques. There are a lot of things that have sentimental value, right? That are important that we don't want to lose. And so we're also looking at we're also going to make sure we're preserving those things.
Thank you.
Is there anybody on the screen who had a question? No hand.
I would like to say one thing.
Okay.
Oh. Thank you. Well, I haven't been to a school board meeting. I don't currently have children in the school district. And it's been 2.5 years, but I want to say, thank you for coming to lead the school district, despite that COVID happened. And you didn't, none of us knew that it was coming. And it must have been like Dante's circles of hell. Because it was just one thing after another that you were having to contend with. And you were new, your family was new to this community. And you are mastering it, all of you. And I just want to say thank you. It's been 2.5 years and I haven't had an opportunity to say it, but well done. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it's with the support of the school board. We have an amazing school board with Kathy and Claire and Jeff, the team. I mean, we have a wonderful, wonderful school board, and the community is so committed. And it has been, there have been a lot of hard decisions, but I haven't felt like I feel good about, you know, the work. I really love the work, and I love the community and the families here in our schools, and we love it too. So it's a gift to me, but thank you. I appreciate it.
On that note, I think maybe we can close the meeting. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending. Thank you.
See ya. How's it been? Yeah.